Hello and welcome to the romance track here at Continual. And in honor of Pride Month, we are talking about romantic suspense. We are talking about action adventure. We are talking about law enforcement and assassins and all kinds of action fiction. Romance optional, but usually still present. So before we get started, let's go around and have our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel Langella, and I am Ari McKay's co-writer, and we write the Herx Mercs action adventure series.
Okay, Ari?
Oh, what Rachel said. Actually, we've been writing together for many years now, and Herx Mercs is one of our most successful of the contemporary action adventure series that we do.
Okay, Jocelyn?
Hi, Jocelyn Drake. I write things that go boom and a lot of sexy, fun scenes as well, with assassins and dragons and God only knows what else half the time.
Okay, Tanya?
Hi, I'm Tanya Chris. And if I'm known for anything, it's for being inconsistent. But amongst the many different things that I write, there are a fair number of suspense or action romances.
Layla?
Hi, I'm Layla Rayne. I write romantic suspense and romantic mystery. I'm the author of the Agents Irish and Whiskey series, Trouble Brewing from that, and most recently the Fog City series.
Okay, and Charlie?
Hi, I'm Charlie Cochet, and I write action, adventure, romantic suspense across several genres, paranormal and contemporary as well. And right now I'm wrapping up the third Wildcards book, which will be out in July, and I'm very excited about.
Okay. And I'm Gail Z Martin, and Morgan Brice. As Gail, I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, near future, post-apocalyptic, and more. And as Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance, where there happen to be a lot of ex-cops, former military, and those kind of guys, because they can handle the bad guys. Which brings me to my question: what draws you to writing romantic suspense and bringing in all these nice, muscular, well-armed men? Charlie?
Well, I grew up watching action movies with my dad, so it's still something I very much enjoy. I'm a big movie geek, and I love a good action film. I love a good comic book film, all the Marvel movies, and so I sort of, when I started writing, it sort of made sense that filtered into my writing. I think it's just like you get to experience the adrenaline and the fun without actually having to be in the danger. So, I don't want to be shot at, but my guys could totally handle it. And, throughout some one-liners while they're doing it, I'll just safely be, in the back observing. But I just find it fun. It's just fun to challenge the characters and, see what kind of shenanigans they get up to. My guys are always, they're trouble magnets. Mayhem ensues. So, but I think that comes from just years growing up, loving action flicks.
Mm-hmm. Ari?
That's a little different for me. I do love a good action movie, and don't get me wrong, Bruce Willis is my dude. I actually spent 36 years working for the Defense Department, either directly or as a contractor, and I worked with an awful lot of military guys, very many Marines, and so I got to hear a lot of stories. And one of the things I love about that was we were able to bring that into the Herx Mercs universe. So there are several incidents that are based in fact that end up in there, just because I've had so much exposure to military people, and so I hope that gives it a little bit of a good realistic kick to it.
Okay, Rachel?
What got me into it? Ari.
I'm seeing a pattern here.
I really was hesitant, but she was the one who had the idea for the Merc series. The idea came into her head. Herc started talking to her, and eventually she talked me into it. But I was like, I don't know. I don't write action. I don't, because I like some action movies, but it's not really my primary genre. So I was like, well, I just don't know. And she talked me into it. And then, several books later, here we are.
Okay, Layla?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Charlie, I loved action movies growing up, but I was always looking for the romance thread in it. I was like, can they get together, right? Like 9 seasons of the X-Files, hello. Along those lines of like, can we see some of that action too? And so, romantic suspense was kind of a natural fit. And I also love plot heavy stuff. Mystery or suspense. Like I want to, get as caught up as the characters and what's happening, try to solve whatever's going on. Like I need the brain activated and kind of solving the puzzle too. And so I really liked that aspect of romantic suspense as well. And it just keeps the pages turning. And it's also a genre that tends to lend itself to the same characters in multiple books. Which also growing up mostly watching television, I'm used to that. Like that's episodic in a way. And so I want to get, in with the characters, hang out with them for a while. And it seems to be a comfy place for us to do that.
Okay, Tanya?
Well, it's somewhat similar to Layla, but not quite so far. Like I don't know if I would say like plot heavy books, but I like medium plot books, I guess. Like if a romance is just the romance and it doesn't have some sort of obstacle to be overcome or external plot that has to be resolved, it tends to lose my attention. So I'm always looking for, all right, well, what are these characters doing together? What is their external plot? And I was a huge mystery reader growing up, so anything that kind of ties together mystery and romance, that feels like the best of both worlds to me. And also, a thing I've learned in real life is that if you want to know how good a partner someone, like a romantic partner someone is going to make, you want to see them in a difficult situation, right? So I like putting my guys into difficult situations, and you find out, okay, what do they do, when the rubber hits the road?
Okay, Jocelyn?
I'm definitely like Charlie Layla mix. I am an action movie junkie. I will watch Die Hard, John Wick, A-Team on repeat because you have the explosions, you have the craziness happening, and you have the impossible situation where they're never going to get out of it. They're never going to survive. And I love that both as a reader and as an author of how deep can I dig this hole and put myself in and then try to plausibly get myself out again. The other half is also the idea of putting these characters in incredibly dangerous situations, and the adrenaline's running high, and the anger and the angst and everything's high, and then bam, they get together, and oh, it's so good. So yeah, that's me.
Like everybody else, I grew up on cop shows and action movies. My grandmother lived with us for a while when I was a kid, and she loved mysteries and cop shows. And so it was a crime spree every night as Columbo and Mannix and everybody swooped in to save the day. And so I just loved the mystery part of it, of figuring out who the bad guy was, and then how do you catch the bad guy, or how do you get away from the bad guy. But a lot of those are also, even though the word hadn't been coined back then, bromance shows, where you often had a team of two guys who were super, super best friends. Maybe they'd been in the military together, they had each other's back, and it was just like true love, except not quite. And I remember writing fan fiction stories back in high school that were Hawaii Five-0 and some of those, and people going, did you just write them together? And I said, maybe. Because it was only going to be a little step to the left, and that's where they, in my mind at least, that's where they would end up. So I love the explosions. I love having to figure things out. Some of the other ones that I grew up on were The Saint and It Takes a Thief, where it was the cat burglar kind of thing, and so it was ultra sneaky. So yeah, those early exposures. It was Write About It or A Life of Crime, I guess. And I'm just not coordinated enough to sneak around on window ledges. Let's just put that out there. So what kind of, as we've talked about, people writing about all kinds of mercenaries and military and assassins and secret agents, how do you do your research? And more importantly, how do you do your research without people showing up at your door to wonder why you're doing your research? Layla?
Not all at once. Yeah, the one that always scares me is that I am always, all of my characters in the Whiskey verse and even in Fog City are working in the federal building in San Francisco. And the courthouses are in the federal building in San Francisco too. And it's like, yeah, okay, I know, I'm looking at the floors. I get it. But you know, it's, you know, part of too of writing in this genre is you want enough detail to make it authentic, but not so much that it's overwhelming and that you lose the plot and the romance and the characters. So there's a balancing act to be had there, but you also want to do it authentically, and have some of the right lingo, some of the right words. You know, definitely check to make sure they could get from point A to point B during that time. You know, it's not that hard to run a Google search on maps, that kind of stuff, right? And just checking that out and doing what you can. And then when you're tired of playing with the rules, you write assassins so you don't have to anymore.
Yes. That works.
Yeah. Like throw out the FBI org chart. It's a whole lot easier that way.
Charlie?
I've been quite fortunate that I have several family members that are in law enforcement. It sort of runs in our family, and they're in various different positions. So like for the thirds, I pick their brains about all the kind of weaponry and like the sort of inside names for things, what they actually call things. And I also have friends who had family. Well, I also, my brother was in the military as well. And I have friends who had relatives in the military. So usually when I need to look something up, I'll grab one of them and, you know, throw questions at them and be like, I need to pick your husband's brain. Can you tell me about this? And the rest I try to research. And then it's surprisingly hard sometimes because you get all these different answers for like the one question. So then I go to a few different people and ask them, is this right? Or, you know, this is saying this, you know, what have you heard, kind of thing. But for other stuff, I mean, there's no way around it. You kind of have to Google it. I'm sure I'm on some kind of watch list or something for Googling various explosives and, you know, how do you bring down a building? You know, is this possible? And so, yeah.
I think we all are.
Yeah. Every once in a while I type into the Google search, I'm researching a book.
There's even a meme I've seen where the junior FBI agent is going, oh my gosh, look at what the search is. No, it's a writer.
Yeah, it's just a writer.
Jocelyn?
God, you're gonna make me admit that I'm lazy. I will not write law enforcement because I refuse to be boxed in. So I've written assassins, I've written mercenaries who really don't follow any kind of rules. I've written guys who just kind of go out on their own and blow shit up because I don't want to be boxed in. I don't want to worry about, well, the police don't really do it this way, and the FBI definitely don't do it this way. So I do Google search for, and I have a lot of books on explosives, scary enough. So it's like I'm doing the research on the weapons, I'm doing the research on the explosions. I am on every watch list probably imaginable because of that. But when it comes to this is what the FBI and this is what the CIA really do. No. I have assassins and we do everything over here. The other thing is that I'm lucky enough, my husband is former military and he's also a former MMA fighter. So when it comes to my fight scenes, I do tend to have some realism there because he puts me in all those holds before I write them. So that is the nice thing, is that we're actually going through all the moves and the punches before I put them on the page. So that is my heavy research.
Okay, Tanya?
Well, so I do have some federal agents and cops. I tend more to write not so much the catch the criminal aspect as the convict the criminal. So I think I'm more known for like my courtroom scenes for the lawyers, prosecuting attorneys and stuff like that. And I worked for a law firm for 10 years, not as a lawyer. And my mother is a lawyer. She wanted me to be a lawyer and I refused. So she eventually had to go and do it herself. So she got her law degree after I had graduated from college. So I'm able to run some things by her. And then I do a lot of Googling, like all the statutes and everything is online available for you to see. So the good news is, I don't do a lot of Google searches on how to commit crimes, just on what the punishment is going to be for them after you've committed them. I'm just researching which would be the good ones to commit, I guess.
How about you, Ari?
So I have been in the very, very unique and wonderful position of having lived all of that stuff, at least somewhat vicariously, for many, many years. And so a lot of the technical details of military operations, I know. I mean, it's stuff that I have had to work with for decades. And I also, did have all of the resources before retirement, at least, of being able to talk to the guys who have lived it, heard all their stories. And, when, we were writing the first Herc Smirk book, I went to some of my friends and I'm like, okay, I have a guy with these traits. Do you think he'd be more of a Marine, or do you think he'd really be more Army Special Forces with this set of skills? And I worked with both kinds of guys, and there would be like, no, he's a Marine. That's obviously that he's going to be a Marine. So that was really, really beneficial to me. And I'm hoping that for the stories that Rachel and I write, that brings a hint of realism to it, because since I worked so closely with these guys and I have so much respect for them, getting something wrong would be really bad, because I would feel like I was, personally insulting the people that I worked with for a very, very long time. So, and it was very, very interesting how accepting a lot of the guys were, because they all knew that I wrote gay romance. They had no problem with it, because they're like, yeah, we've seen it. We knew it happened. It, don't ask, don't tell. It really didn't matter. We knew that there were guys hooking up, and a lot of them would tell me stories about, we had a sergeant and, this kind of thing. And so that actually helped me to put a human face on these fictional characters, because I knew the guys that, had been through a lot of this stuff, and I could pick all of their brains about technical details. So after all these years, and then they turned me on to reading Tom Clancy Rainbow Six and reading Mark Greeny's Gray Man. And so I have now read like almost every one of the hard military action adventure series out there. I mean, if there's a set I haven't read, I'd love to hear about it, because I've read them all now. And so it kind of seeps in.
Mm-hmm. Rachel?
Yeah, she does the research. I'm like, okay, what? And in fact, when we first started writing the Herc Merc series, I was adamant. It's like, oh no, you're writing the Mercs. I don't know this stuff. I could not do it plausibly. And so I was always the client. That was who I wrote. And And finally, I think it was about the fourth book.
It was the fourth.
It was, and I finally said, okay, I'll try it. But I had her holding my hand. And I have written some of the mercs now because I do feel more comfortable with it. But yes, I basically go, am I doing it right? To Ari. And then, like, I get her to make sure that I'm not messing anything up, because she's got the knowledge and has done the reading and the research. And so I rely on her.
Okay. What's the hardest part for you to feel like you've gotten it right? Or what do you think is one of the hardest parts for authors in general in this subgenre to get right? Is it the weapons? Is it the military jargon? Is it knowing the chain of command? What do you think is the hardest part to make sure you're not throwing readers out of the story? Jocelyn?
Wow. I feel like it's, to me, it's making it believable, plausible. I'm creating these incredible plots, these insane action driven, the bad guy is going after and kidnapping, stealing, killing, whatever. And I have to make sure the whole time that you're not going, okay, she's now jumped the shark. I am not buying this anymore. I've been totally taken out of the adventure because I don't buy it. And it's finding how far can I push things before I'm now cresting shark. And I'm like, we don't want to ever hit that point. I want you to stay on this whole journey with me. I want you to be completely invested in these characters, their love story. And I want you to believe right up until the end, whether, I want you to be worried about whether or not they're going to get together. I want you to be cheering for them the whole time. And if I'm screwing up the plot, if I'm making it too unbelievable, then I've lost you. So to me, that's my hardest part.
Okay, Charlie?
Part of it is what Jocelyn said. It's making sure, even though you're suspending belief to a certain amount, and this is for contemporary because they're just completely different because we've got shifters and stuff, but it's sort of still within reason, plausible, for like an action flick. We're not flinging cars at helicopters to bring them down, but but there's also yeah, die hard. So there's and for me the I think one of the most important things for me is to do these guys justice, as with my military characters and law enforcement. I want to be respectful, and all these guys have backstories. They've all been through a lot, and I just want to make sure that I don't let them down, and I do the characters justice, whatever part of the military that they were in, whatever's happened to them. I never want to, and I write a lot of humor too, so there's the balance of not making light of what they've been through, but still just finding the balance between the light and the dark. So for me, that's a key thing, along with the plausibility. I want to get the research right, obviously, but I don't think it's as important to get the right type of firearm down as it is to, be respectful to the guys that I'm writing. So that's important to me.
Tanya?
The hardest part for me is figuring out what the solution is. I'm a pantser, so I start to write a mystery subplot, and then at some point I realize I don't actually know what the answer is to this mystery. I haven't worked that far ahead. So now I have to figure out so what fits all of these clues, what solution fits what I've written so far. And sometimes I've written myself into a real corner, and that's pretty tricky. The other thing that is a challenge for me is action sequences. So I'm hearing some of these people talk about these wonderful action sequences that they do. I think that's why I specialize in courtroom scenes, right? That's just people using sneaky words, sneaky clever words. That's something I'm good at. But the when things start flying around, it takes me a whole lot of editing to get that to sound right and be something that the reader will actually be able to picture. So yeah, I'd rather have my heroes like talk the villain to death.
Rachel?
I'm going to agree with Tanya and say the choreography of the action sequences. You know, kind of like I said earlier, I trust Ari to let me know about, you know, using the correct jargon, you know, and get sort of the technical details correct. But since action has not been my genre, I like it. I don't hate it, but it's just not something that I'm drawn to read or watch as much as she is. I haven't seen as much like on TV and movies and whatever. And so trying to choreograph an action sequence was really intimidating to me. And, you know, I basically just said, you do it at first. Now I think I help a little bit more than I used to, but yeah, that is always intimidating just because I don't have a whole lot of experience with it.
Okay, Layla?
Yeah, I mean, I think to what Jocelyn said, for me, a lot of it is striking balance, and not having to jump the shark moment. I know one of my favorite shows is The Wire. The last season, there's like what the character does has to make sense. There's a scene and there's something that happened in the last season of The Wire. It's still my favorite show, but like totally jumped the shark, and it killed that character for me, right? And so like I don't ever want to do that, right? And part of what feeds into that then are two things, like competence. I love a competent hero. That is my favorite thing in the world, right? Give me all the competent guys. And so, and women. And so I want to see, you know, really smart people. And if they really hate each other and they're going at it and they can't help it, right? Like that's great, right? The one character needs the other to solve the problem, right? And so getting that balance right, making sure that you know, all that's coming out on the page, and then does it pass? I always say, does it pass the Bond test, right? Like, could it fly in a Bond movie? Okay, right? If it's past a Bond movie, that's where you draw the line, right? And like trying to get that balance just right.
Oh, I don't know. I liked in the A-Team when they shot down a helicopter in a tank while it was falling through midair. I mean, you know, that was just memorable.
What was it? Was it Hobbs and Shaw with the tank, like them pulling it
Oh my
around,
gosh,
like
yeah.
slinging it? Okay.
Ari?
I think there are two things that I find difficult. One of them from a technical standpoint, and that is villains. So in a good action adventure, you always have to have a good villain, and it's striking a balance to make them extremely dangerous and scary, but not over the top Dr. Evil, you know, stuff with the freaking sharks and the freaking laser beams. So
Yeah.
that is difficult from a technical standpoint because you want the villain to be solid and believable, but you don't want them to be, I mean, they have to have a flaw, they have to be able to be overcome, but not too easily. So that could be a little bit tricky to try to find exactly where to draw that line between.
Yeah, especially if your characters are so big, your villain's got to be big, right?
Yeah, and the bigger
Yeah.
the characters, the bigger the villain, right? So, you know, you can't, you know, put them up against some little pipsqueak kind of person, because then the conflict is over too quickly. There's not enough danger. There's not enough reasons for explosions, and I love explosions too. But so that's a technical thing. But then emotionally, what we wrote a book called No Pain, No Gain, and the character in that, the primary MC, has extremely bad PTSD, and living in that character's head for the duration of that book was so intensely painful to me because I could put myself into that position, even though I've never lived anything remotely like what he went through. It just, I mean, I would find myself sobbing. It would just be so hard and so draining to try to do that. And so, and of course, the book that we wrote after that also had somebody with PTSD, but that kind of thing and is rough, I think, as an author when you have a damaged character and they're damaged for reasons just totally beyond their control, nothing they could do about it. They were doing it for noble reasons, in fact, when they got damaged. And that just, I mean, it was hard. It was super hard. And so now I don't know that I could ever write a character like that again. And I hope that we did justice to the character, and I put in all kinds of warnings and links to PTSD resources for people. But that, I think that was probably the hardest thing ever, was living in that character's head. And I don't even know that I could do it ever again.
Yeah, for me, I have a bad habit of killing more people in a fight scene than showed up to the fight. First draft, there are always more bodies than you had. And I co-write with my husband. And so one of his jobs, he knows, is on every battle, count the people before the battle, count the bodies after the battle. And Gail, you killed 2 more than you had show up. So you got to either take out the bodies or beef up the incoming. And we know to look for that now. The other thing, well, I've also killed, I tend to have necromancer characters in several of the series. And so it is possible to kill somebody and bring them back, but you have to count and make sure that you haven't killed somebody more times than you brought them back, and then it causes problems. I don't come from a military background. I'm not personally well versed in firearms, but I do blow an awful lot of stuff up in the book. So this is where having friends who know this stuff are really great resources that won't turn you over to law enforcement when you call and say, hey, how much C4 would it take to do fill in the blank? And it's funny that the whole thing about fight scenes came up because a friend of mine who is an active Marine colonel also writes, and she said that fight scenes were so easy. And I looked at her and said, fight scenes are hard. And she said, no. Fight scenes are easy. Dialogue is hard. I said, oh, dialogue is easy. She said, okay, we'll switch. You write the dialogue, I'll write the fight scene. We have yet to do that, but one person's poison. It's just kind of funny how that works. So with all the explosions, the guns, the fight scenes, all of the intrigue, where do you find time to get the romance and the love in there? And how do you insert that in a way that is true to the characters, true to their situation, their backstory? You mentioned, the wounded and scarred warrior, which is just downright irresistible. And how do you fit the love in there, Jocelyn?
I actually I have a book going through my editors right now, and one's an assassin and one's a cat burglar, and honestly, it was like I had to turn the hose on them a couple times because I couldn't get them to stop and get on with the plot. So it depends on the character sometimes. Sometimes they're more interested in just having some fun, and I have to guys, we have to go steal this thing, or we have to go shoot these people over here, and they go, yeah, later. Other times the other times it is usually somebody got hurt and needs some tender loving to make things better. So that's usually that's how I go with it. They're either constantly jumping into bed or somebody got hurt, and typically somebody's getting hurt in my books. So.
Hurt comfort is one of my favorite tropes. Tanya?
This is actually what I like best about writing something that has a suspense element or a mystery element is that the way the romance develops is just so much more organic. Like, you have to have some reason for people to be spending time together, right? And so if they have this common aim, especially if it's enemies to lovers or it's opposite attract, like, why are these people spending time together? And so they have some common goal, or maybe sometimes they're working against each other, but usually in my books, a common goal. And they have to accomplish that together. And they have to meld, like, my strength with your strength equals our solution to it. And it's just so much more meaningful to me. And then when, if I'm reading a romance that doesn't have any external plot, and it's just like, yeah, I like you and you like me, and we're, we're having a happy time with this pizza. It doesn't tell me the same about what these characters are really going to be like when they have to go through life together. I like seeing them fighting at each other's side, even if the fight is in the courtroom, whatever it is. Let's see you work to a common goal. And I dislike writing the darkest moment or a big misunderstanding in a relationship. Very few of my books have like any kind of a breakup scene or something negative that happens in the relationship at like the 75% mark. It's much more likely what I'm going to do is have the darkest moment that is the external plot and them fixing it together. And to me, that says, okay, you two are going to be happy in the future, right? You know how to be a team and come together and have this victory. So that's really why I like writing this kind of book, because it just gives the characters the best place to show why they really do belong together.
Okay, Charlie?
It's definitely easier when it's the same couple in a series. So it was easier in the thirds with Dex and Sloane because I had 10 books to build up their relationship and take them from they just met and can't stand each other to their happily ever after, marriage at the end. So, but the balance there, it was, there's got to be a lull in the action because I can't just be go, 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 go. These guys are gonna, pass out if you never give them a break, especially with everything that we throw at them. So it's in those lulls, depending on the situation and the plot and what's going on, that their reactions to things, their proximity to the other characters and how the relationship develops. It's definitely more of a challenge with when you have a series that's like a different couple in every book. So you have to, in between the action scenes, because it's, as much as we see it like in movies and stuff where like, they're running for their lives and, they run into a cave or whatever, and then they start making out, but people are outside shooting at them. But it's there's only so much, you're stretching the plausibility as it is to then, have them stop in the middle of, a life and death situation to make out. So it's creating those little realistic lulls where they have time together to connect and build that relationship. So it's a challenge, but it's a lot of fun.
Cool. Ari?
I think for the stories that Rachel and I write, because yes, it's action adventure, but it is primarily a romance. So I don't know, I think we've always focused on the relationship, and the action adventure is like added on as the spice. It's not, I mean, when it comes right down to it, the characters are the important ones, the relationship is the important stuff. And so the action is a means of driving the relationship forward more quickly, rather than the relationship just being thrown in between the action scenes. So every action scene that we have is meant to drive that relationship forward. So it's kind of structured that way from the get-go.
Okay. Layla?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm definitely agree with Tanya a lot. Like, I much prefer kind of external conflict driving the characters. Like, they're going to have their internal conflict too, but when you can see them team up and really tackle, a challenge together, be it a case, be it, we got to get out of this alive, whatever, it does really, I think, meld the two characters together and help solidify who they are together and how they're going to move forward. And yeah, I just much prefer the, oh my God, we're gonna die moment over, oh my God, we're gonna break up because of a miscommunication, right? I like those higher stakes, right? And so it's tough for me, like probably getting the romance in is the biggest challenge of anything for me. I can get lost in plot real easy. Everyone knows that. And so like, you know, pulling that romance in into what Charlie said, you know, the book I did, Queen's Ransom, like probably my favorite scene in the whole book is when Helena comes home late one night after, you know, a soup con where they've gone about how they're going to take down someone. And she just stands in the room where her love interest Celia is asleep. Right. And it's just this peaceful moment. And that's what she does for her, is all that shenanigans that are going on. Here's the center. Here's the peace. Right. And it's one of those like lull moments. And those are fun to write. Like I'm hopefully getting better at those. I had to learn how to do that. But like, yeah, finding those places and where to weave that in is also, it's a lot of fun too, building the romance.
Rachel?
So it helps that for our series, the Herc Smirk series, there is a sort of self-contained sandbox. Every character or most characters are going to be connected to Hercules security one way or the other. Sometimes it's a security guy client, sometimes it's a couple or three security guys, but there's always that connection. So you can have continuing characters pop up, although each one of our books has a different, like primary couple. But there's always a mission. One of the bodyguards is protecting a client. A couple of the mercs are, overseas busting up a drug ring or something. There's always some kind of mission that provides the forward motion. And even if they don't know each other going in, like, bodyguard client, they're thrown together thanks to the conflict, whether it's because the client has a stalker or what have you. They are in close proximity, and that gives their relationship room to build and grow in between creepy stalker guy coming along and leaving presents.
Yeah, usually in mine are still paranormal. So there's some sort of external supernatural threat, either to the characters themselves or usually to the city, the East Coast, the world. And you've got a combination of the person who really knows the supernatural and the cop or the ex-military guy who has the street smarts and understands how to launch an offensive against that, and getting them on the same page, overcoming the skepticism or the mistrust, and having them be able to trust each other enough to go against this supernatural threat is all of the fun. And then with an established couple, which mine develop into, it's how did they start peeling back some of those layers and exposing some of those old wounds that haven't healed yet, and how does that cause complications for the next big thing they have to fight. And that's always part of the fun, is getting to see them in that light with that vulnerability that you don't get unless you have a romantic coupling. Yep. Well, folks, we have blown through the time and it has gone so fast. So please, let's go around and let everybody know if you have a new release coming up, something recently out, something that is out right now, and where to find you on social media. So I'm going to start with Charlie.
So right now, like I said, I'm wrapping up Sleight of Hand, which is the third Wild Cards book. And the Wild Cards is a spinoff from the Four King Security series. That's going up for pre-order June 8th, and it's out July 6th. So I'm very excited about that. It's been a little while since we've gotten to the Kings, guys. So That's Joker and Gia's book. And for anybody who wants to find me, tend to be on Facebook quite a bit. So you can always find me on Facebook, and you can look up my books at charliecochet.com.
Okay, Tanya?
So I just released the last book in my Hell's Bedroom series, which is a 3-book series, BDSM series that follows a human trafficking case. So the first book in the series is a private investigator. The second book, it's a uniformed officer. And the third book is the prosecuting attorney. So that the human trafficking case continues throughout the 3 books, but each book features a different couple. And they are, all 3 of them, BDSM, focusing around a BDSM club called Hell's Bedroom. The best place to find about me is really my website, tanyachris.com, where I have a bunch of free stories that you can read online as well. But I am on both Facebook and Twitter.
Okay, Layla?
So I wrapped up my Fog City series about a family of assassins, it's LGBTQ series, in the spring. I'm currently now working on a polyromantic suspense that features a local cop, an FBI agent, and a literature professor who are kind of tangled up in a Shakespearean mystery. I'm super stoked about that. The cover reveal is June 9, and the book is releasing August 16. And I am online at www.laylarayne.com, and all of my socials are at Layla Rayne. So.
Okay, Rachel?
Okay, our most recent new release was part of the Magical Emporium series. It's called Stop Dragging My Heart Around, and it was in our Asheville Arcana sandbox. You can find Ari McKay and Rachel Langella books at arimckay.com. And I'm kind of on a social media hiatus because of the day job, but when I am around, I'm usually on Instagram.
Okay, Ari, anything to add to that?
Yes, you can find me on Facebook all of the time. I practically live on it. And so just look me up as Ari McKay, and arimckay.com for our books. And we did have a re-release recently. That was our latest release, is Call of the Night Singers, which is our Southern Gothic horror. It's a novella, and it's kind of our tribute to the kind of spooky sort of H.P. Lovecraft kind of genre. So anybody who wants to check us out for a very different kind of story, that's that. And we're hoping to also have another Herx Merx book out in the not too distant future.
Okay, Jocelyn?
Let's see, I am finishing up my Exit Strategy series. This is my series about assassins. And Forbidden Lover is coming out on June 11th. And then the final book in the series, Accidental Lover, will be out July 9th. I can be found on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on my website at jocelyndrake.com.
Okay, and my most recent Morgan Brice books, one was Haven in the Magical Emporium series, and that is part of my Fox Hollow universe. I also have, I'm also part of the collection for Fables Retold, which is 6 authors, 6 full-length books that are all male romance retellings of classic fairy tales. Mine has Goat Shifters, and it is also connected to my Fox Hollow series. And then I'm currently working on the next book in the Treasure Trail series, which has a guy who used to hunt art fraud and money laundering regarding art, and a burned out Newark cop, and they get together and hunt down paranormal threats in Cape May, New Jersey. And you can find me online, morganbrice.com, and some variation of either of my names. Well, folks, thank you so much for a wonderful conversation and for being with us tonight. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There'll be more romance and mystery and suspense here on Continual. So we'll see you online.